contract forms change, as you know.
Periodically. Um, and so that's what one of the things we're going to be talking about today. Um, if y'all have any questions while I'm speaking, please feel free to interrupt me. You're not going to hurt my feelings. There's not a dumb question. Okay. Part of my job at Republic Title as an underwriting attorney is to field questions. Okay. As attorneys at Republic, and there are about 5 or 6 of us that do what I do. We don't give legal advice on a particular deal. We can't talk to a specific party and go, hey, you need to do this because that's giving legal advice. What we can do is help guide you through contract issues, try to answer those questions. And I'll always take the call, I'll always take the email. And if it appears that, hey, I can't answer this for one party because that's taking sides, that's giving legal advice, which I can't do. But that said, let's talk in generalities. Let's look at the contract. Let's pull it out together and kind of go through it. And maybe the light bulb will come on for you. And a lot of times I'll say, hey, this is a fact issue between your parties. That'd be great. Thank you. I do have a little bit of allergy going on. And also, when you ask a question, don't hesitate to use your voice. Um, I've got a problem with this ear. Part of it's age related. I hate to admit that. But the other part is I went to a birthday party for a really close friend back in February of last year. And it was a very small venue. They had a live band, and I thought the best seat or the best place to stand was right next to the speaker. Turns out that was a bad idea because this eardrum is not that great anymore. So I love this title, Escape Hatches for Buyers. We're going to talk about today places in the contract where a buyer can terminate, where they can get out of a deal. And I'm going to talk about issues that we see, issues that you'll encounter. And by knowing these things, you'll just have an idea. Okay, I got to do this. I got to make sure this is time sensitive. How many of y'all keep some type of calendar on every transaction you have? Awesome, 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 awesome. If you don't, you should. And back in the old days, when I was a baby lawyer, before I got in the title business, it was a long time ago, I had a card catalog, basically a little plastic box with index cards. Every card had one of my files by numbers. This is not real estate deals. This is, it's practicing law. And then it had 30 or 31 days, and it had the months of the year. That was my card catalog. And so when I'd work on a file, I'd make a note on that card. When's the next time I want to see this file? Because I don't want them stacked up on my desk. So I would make a note, what I want to see, what day I want to see it. And I might put it in March 10th, 2026, next time I want to put my hands on that file, unless someone calls and asks me. And that file goes in the drawer. But basically, I'm talking some kind of tickler system where you can keep up with time-sensitive matters. That's kind of what we're going to talk about today, where if something doesn't happen within a certain period of time, buyer's got an out. Okay? One thing I want to mention, yeah, it's in here. Okay. I've ripped my outline off because what we have a contract and the other documents we're going to be talking about. Hi there, come on in. You'll see the last 2 documents in your outline would be the release of earnest money and then the notice of buyer's termination of contract. Okay. I'm going to kind of talk about that first. Come on up. Because I'm going to call on you first since you're sitting so close. Look at the notice of buyer's termination of contract first. It's the very last document in your outline. These are 7 specific places in the contract where the buyer can terminate when certain things happen or don't happen. Okay. And so when you're filling this out, I know you've done it. I know representing buyers, you've done it. For representing sellers, you've gotten one. First of all, where does this notice go? Anybody? Come on, I know you know. Where does the notice go? No. Where does it first go? This is notice of buyer's termination. Goes to the seller. copy the title company with it. If you send it only to the title company, you're not complying with the contract. And let me say this as a general rule. These contracts are great. They have been written, we call it promulgated, that is approved by TREC, which is your licensing agency. They've been promulgated by the Broker Lawyer Committee, which is made up, changes periodically with people, of lawyers that are in this business in residential real estate and brokers, real estate brokers. And they meet all the time and they say, hey, we got a problem with this issue, or the legislature passed this new law, we need to tweak the contract a little bit. And that's when we get these contract changes. Or through practice, somebody goes, hey, this isn't working out like we thought it would. We need to tweak the language. My point is, you and your parties are bound by the terms of this contract. And what I like to do when someone calls me and says, pull the contract out, let's look at paragraph so-and-so. Let's go over it together. Because have you ever heard the phrase, it says what it says and it means what it means? I mean, it's there. And a lot of times people say, yeah, but, and then whatever. I'm like, there is no yeah, but in the contract. It says this, period. And that's what we have to do. That's what we're bound by. Title company's responsibility is to both sides and to follow the contract. So is yours when you're representing your client. Come on in. You can sit wherever you need to. So I'm going to direct you now to paragraph 21 in the contract. If you'll turn to that real quick. I've probably said this to you before, either on a Zoom class or here. This is probably one of my favorite paragraphs in the whole contract. Paragraph 21. And it says notices. I'm going to read it. I want you all to read it with me. All notices from one party to the other. Stop right there. Who are the parties? Buyer and seller. Not the title company, not the real estate agent. The parties are the buyer and the seller, right? Yes. So it says, all notices from one party to the other must be in writing. Well, the written notice is over here on the last page. Notice of buyer's termination contract. And are, this is the best part, and are effective means the notice is effective when it is mailed to, hand delivered at, or transmitted by fax or electronic transmission as follows. Electronic transmission means email. That's what that means. And so then you have to the buyer at, to the seller at, phone number, email, fax, with a copy to buyer's agent, with a copy to seller's agent at. That was added a long time ago. So everybody's going to get the notice, but it really has to be, if it's a buyer's notice to terminate, which is what we're talking about today, it's got to be sent to the seller in accordance with paragraph 21. So when the contract is written, if all that is here for a seller is an address, then it's going to have to be mailed to, how are you going to know? Or hand delivered at, which to me is FedEx or UPS with a tracking number, okay? Or fax or electronic transmission. But again, if it's only an address, then that's what you have to do. Now, some people say, well, is it effective when it's received? Or what does it say here in the contract? It's effective when it's mailed. It's effective when hand delivered. So to me, that means when that FedEx or UPS is received, when it's dropped off at the doorstep. That's what that means to me. I don't like either one of those options. I like email, because when you send an email, you go to your sent email and you see a copy of what you just sent. And you also see the date and the time that it was sent. Boom. And what does the contract say? It's effective when it is sent by electronic transmission. If you want to paraphrase that. So let's say easy option period. Buyer says, I'm out. I don't do the deal. What do? The buyer and buyer's agent prepare this notice of termination. You check box number 1. You look at paragraph 21. You say, great, there's an email. You email a copy of this notice to terminate to the seller at the seller's email address that's in the contract. What if it's wrong? Too bad. They put it wrong. Somebody put it wrong. Please make sure it's right. Please double check that. Okay. But it's effective when it's emailed. And then you take that sent email and you send it to us. Here's a copy of the notice of buyer's right to terminate, along with my email that shows the date and time it was sent. And I'm telling you, if we get that in our office, our staff stops, they pull this out, they look at the effective date. Please fill in the effective date. Because if you don't fill in the effective date, there's no way to determine, okay, how many days you have. That's extremely important. But we'll look at it, and if this has been timely sent, and if it's been sent according to 21, we cut the check. Come get it. And then the seller called, well, wait a minute. They start telling you their story. I'm sorry, we're following the contract. Yeah, but, okay, politely listen, but contract's terminated because the contract says it's effective when it's delivered by that method. So what's my takeaway? My takeaway is please use email for both of you, your customer and yourself. Well, I don't want to give my email address. That's private. Please. We can find anybody's email address. It's just out there. Besides that, the better rationale is, look, there are things that are sensitive in your contract. This is a big deal. When notices are sent, we need a way to get it to you. And that's the best way, in my opinion, I'm speaking as if I'm you, is to use your email address. Okay? Any questions on that? Yes.
So if the seller's agent, when they executed contract, so usually the buyers draft the contract and send it to the seller's agent, and seller agent come back either accept or whatever, negotiate. In the end, when they execute, they do not put seller's email address in this notice area. They only put their own.
I know.
See lots
I
of
know.
agents, they just put their own,
Yes.
their agent's
Yes.
address in here.
Right.
So is it necessary for us to say, wait a minute, we can't execute this. We have to go back to get the seller's email address before we can execute a contract? What would you recommend?
I would recommend that you put the seller's email address and the agent's email address. Now, the argument contrary to that is I've only got the agent's address. Under the theory of agency, you are their agent. You're acting on their behalf. Then arguably, you can say, hey, that was effective because it's sent to the agent. But what does 21 say? It says
Party.
to the seller.
Yeah.
And then the broker lawyer committee, remember, I didn't write this. You didn't write this. The broker lawyer committee did, and it got promulgated by Trek. It says with a copy to seller's agent. And so when you're talking to the buyer's agent, say, hey, I need the seller's email address in there. Well, we're just going to use this. Well, that's not what the contract says. That's where I would stand. I wouldn't want to hold up a deal or get into litigation over the fact that, is there really agency here as far as this contract provision is concerned? Who wants to go down that road? So to me, the best, easiest practice is to put both email addresses. Again, particularly because it says with a copy. That presumes there's been another one sent somewhere, and I'm now sending a copy to the agent. Just a quick story and a warning. Don't put your office address. Just you. Okay? I had an agent do that one time. And the HOA documents went to that agent's office by FedEx because there's no email. It's just an office address. There were about $15,000 worth of non-compliance issues under the HOA after they did their inspection. All of that was outlined in the documents that got sent. Where? To that agent's office, because their office address was on paragraph 21. We get to closing, We have the document from the HOA that says, hey, here's a notice of noncompliance. You have to sign this because now it's going to be your responsibility, Mr. Buyer. What are you talking about? I have no idea what you're talking about. And the agent says, yeah, what are you talking about? We didn't know about this. And I'm like, okay, just a minute. And I walk out. I said, I'll be back in just a minute. We have a great computer system. And I went out and I pulled a copy of the transmittal letter that was addressed to the address in paragraph 21 to him, a copy of the FedEx air bill, and a copy of the receipt on the FedEx air bill showing that Betty at that office signed for it. So I went back and I said, can I talk to you for a second out here? I didn't want to embarrass him. And I said, here. I said, this package is at your office and has been there for 3 weeks. Does Betty work for you? Yeah, she's my receptionist. I said, I don't ever go to my office. Sorry. I said, would you like a cup of coffee? Because I'm going to let you talk to your client before I come back in. That guy had to pay for all those non-compliance issues. That was bad. So I don't know. To me, this is simple. And the best argument or best explanation you can offer your client is, hey, this has your information with a copy to me. And that way you're in the loop and you know what's going on. But back to my example, the notice of termination is signed, the appropriate box is checked. Hopefully it gets emailed with a copy to you. We look at it, we look at the effective date, and like, yep, that's timely. That deal is terminated. Period. Now, if people want to talk and bring the deal back to life, fine. That's fine with me. I don't care. We'll follow everybody's instruction, but it has to be mutual. And they can pull the deal back up, typically addendum to the contract, or an email from everybody. Hey, we're rescinding that notice. There's always a workaround, okay? But not always the case.
One more question.
Yes.
So about the earnest money.
Yeah.
You mentioned that because it's terminated, that it satisfy everything, you cut the check.
Mhm.
What if they have a dispute on the earnest money? Like how much? Like
That is a good question. And the question is, what if they're disputing the earnest money? This is how I underwrite that. If I'm not aware of a dispute and this notice to terminate comes in and it was done properly and it was timely, that deal's dead, in my opinion. 5 minutes later, the seller calls and goes, nah, come out. I'm like, it's too late. I'm sorry. And I'll stand on that all day long. Okay. If we're aware, and here's what happens, and this is how it comes up. A lot of times when there is a right to terminate, 1 through 7, particularly on this notice to terminate, if they've checked one of those and sent it in, but they also did the release of earnest money form. I talked about this, I think, the last time I was here, but it's so important because it gets so misunderstood. If your buyer has the right to terminate, period, don't send the release of earnest money along with the notice to terminate. Because where are you sending that? You're sending it to the seller. And when the seller gets that release of earnest money, it goes, oh, $5,000 going to Jay, the buyer. Oh, I want the earnest money. So they cross that out, or they do their own form, and they put Betty. And then they send that to the title company. Now we have 2 releases of earnest money. One says Jay gets the money. The other says Betty gets the money. That is a conflict. So what does the title company do? Y'all figure it out. Let me know. Because I can't split $5,000. Okay, unless that's what y'all tell me to do. I need to know the release. Let me say it this way. If your buyer has the right to terminate under the contract, send the notice to terminate according to paragraph 21. Don't send the release of earnest money as well. You're inviting a problem. You're inviting the seller to enter into a conflict. Go, no, I get it. I don't like them. They strung me along. They messed up my house. Whatever. I've heard it all. Just don't do it. Now I'll tell you this, and I can't speak for other title companies, but I do know, and I've taught this so many times. Well, XYZ title company says I need both. They're wrong. They're wrong. I don't know who they are. I don't care. I'm just telling you, if you follow the contract and the buyer has that right and you're closing with us, I'm not going to say, oh, I need a release of earnest money. I don't know. I'm going to look at the contract. So let's say that almost simultaneously we hear from the seller, I'm expecting this deal to terminate, and I want the earnest money. I'm going, okay, thanks for your phone call. I'm not going to acknowledge that. I hope my staff won't. We're bound by the paper. We're bound by the contract form. And I want you to have confidence in that you can do it. If the other agent goes, well, no, you need this. Well, no, we don't. We have the right to terminate under the contract. We've already sent it to the seller and a copy to you and a copy to the title company. We're going by to pick up the check in 5 minutes. And they yell, and they scream, and they tell you why you're wrong. And you just politely go, thank you, appreciate your phone call. You're safe on that. Any questions on that? Okay, look at the release of earnest money. Oh, yeah.
So who fills out this paper?
Who fills out that?
Release of earnest money.
Any party.
But you said that we don't have to, if we send this one under the timing,
Mm-hmm.
we don't worry about the seller. Okay.
No. Now, let's say you are beyond a time to terminate. So 1 through 7 doesn't work. All right, 1 through 7 are going to relate back to your contract. We're going to talk about that, I promise, in a minute. But you can't do the notice to terminate automatically. You're past the option period. Title commitment's been done. Survey's been done. Worst case, and I've had it happen so many times. You get down to a day or two before closing, and buyer, sometimes seller, goes, you know what? I'm not doing this. Whatever. They woke up cranky. And they're just like, I'm not doing this. And then they send a release of earnest money to the other side. Our phone call is usually, you can't do that. I'm like, well, they've done it. You all need to work this out. But that's where this release of earnest money would come in. Now look at it for just a minute in the bold, okay, where it says notice. This form provides for the release of parties, buyer, seller, brokers, you, and title companies from all liability under the contract, not just for the disbursement of earnest money. Do not sign this form if it is not your intention to release all persons signing this form from all liability. Read it carefully. If you don't understand, consult your attorney. And so our opinion is, if we get this, and let's say we get 2, one from the buyer, one from the seller. One has the earnest money going to the buyer, the other one has earnest money going to the seller. And they've signed it, and the agents have signed it, and they've given us a copy. We consider that contract terminated. And the only issue is who gets the earnest money. And I know that differs a little bit from other title companies, so I'm just telling you what our policy is. Okay? We would take a second contract under that circumstance, because we're of the opinion that by this document, the parties have terminated the deal and released everybody. The only thing in dispute is who gets the earnest money. And so we'll take another deal on that property. Some title companies will not, but we will. So what happens? Usually the agents are calling the closer and explaining why they're right. And we politely say, I understand, I hear what you're saying, but we have a conflict. You need to talk to the other side. And then we get the phone call from the other side explaining why they're right. They said, we understand, we appreciate your phone call, but you need to get with the other side and you'll need to work this out. In other words, the title company shouldn't take sides. And this falls squarely back on the shoulders of the buyer and the seller. Okay. To discuss among themselves who gets the earnest money. And if you've been in a situation like that, it can get nasty. We have drawers of files in our office. That very situation where people just, they dig their heels in. They're not going to give it to the other side. They're not going to split it. They're just mad. Well, stay mad. I mean, what's that going to do for you? And I'm going to tell you something. You're going to ask me a question. I already know what it is. But again, it's not our money. It belongs to somebody, but it's not ours. And somebody says, well, it goes to the state. Not automatically. So that's a misconception in the marketplace. It doesn't just automatically go to the state if the parties can't agree. In fact, it takes a long time sometimes for that to actually happen, and where there's been actually no contact with either side, because I want to say it's 4 or 5 years, but if something happens in that 4 or 5 year period, somebody contacts us, that extends it again. So we can't just give it to the state. You know where you see in the paper, or usually the paper, no one takes paper anymore, unclaimed property, where the state has unclaimed property, that's kind of where it goes. But it's rare that we do that. The other thing a title company can do is file a lawsuit in district court in the county where the property is, and serve both the seller and the buyer, because they're the parties, okay? And so they become defendants in that lawsuit, serve them, and then we'd file a motion with the court and say, Judge, here's the contract, here's the earnest money we've deposited with you into the court's registry, is what it's called. There's a dispute over who gets this, and the parties are now before you, not literally, but by paper. They'll have to set a hearing date to tell the story, and you decide who gets the money. And oh, by the way, we are filing this motion to get out of this lawsuit as the plaintiff, because we don't have a fight here. This is between the buyer and the seller. And so we're out. And the judge will let us out. We said, oh, and we get our court costs for filing the suit and our attorney's fees for getting this far to come out of that earnest money. That can be around $1,500 to $2,000. So if you're fighting over $2,500, are you kidding me? Even $5,000, are you kidding me? So a lot of times I'll call the agents. I'll go, look, if this is a total impasse, we can do that and let y'all tell your story. But do you really want to do that? Because you're going to dilute the money. Y'all work this out. I've had that phone call so many times. Okay. I beat those up. Any questions on those two? But it's important to kind of hit those first, because now you kind of see the importance as we go through the contract and talk about different places where the buyer and seller can get out. I'm going to ask this question, see if anybody knows the answer. Is there anywhere in this contract where the seller has the right to terminate?
Yes.
Whoever said yes, you're correct. Where is it? Where is it?
Earnest money.
Earnest money. And it really says if the earnest money is not delivered timely, okay, whatever the parties have agreed to in the contract, if it's not delivered timely, then after that time has expired, the seller has the right to terminate the contract. We've literally had races to the title company where the seller and buyer, seller comes in with their notice to terminate, it's done. And they're right after that, here comes the buyer. No, 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 no. Too late. The seller beat you here. That deal's dead. So yeah, you're absolutely right. That's the one place. Okay. Now we're going to dig in on paragraph 1 of this under contracts of sale, paragraph 5B. Come on. Okay. This is the termination option. It's within 3 days after the effective date. Okay. Within 3 days after the effective date. Time is of the essence. What does that mean? There's no excuse if it's not timely. Oh, I had a wreck. Oh, I was in the hospital. Oh, I was sick in bed. None of that matters. Time is of the essence means no excuses. So it's got to be delivered. Is it 5 o'clock or is it 11:59 of the third day, after the effective date. Remember, anywhere you see after the effective date, you don't count the effective date as day one. It's the day after is day one. Okay, good. So for delivery of earnest money, is it 5 o'clock or is it 11:59? Nope, it's 11:59. The only place in the contract where it's 5 o'clock is for your termination. That's it. I'll give you a minute to check me. Okay. If your contract is silent, it's 11:59. The contract is not silent on the termination. C and B, it says, seller grants buyer the unrestricted right to terminate the contract by giving notice of termination to the seller within blank days. You got to fill in that after the effective date. So that's your option period. All right. Notices under this paragraph, meaning a notice to terminate, must be given by 5 p.m. local time where the property is located by the date specified. So that simply means if you got a 10-day option, on day 10, after the effective date, your buyer wants to terminate, they need to do that notice of termination before 5 p.m. on that day. And again, that's why email is so much better. Because what if you're up at day 10 and the buyer goes, I want out, and they didn't put an email? All you have is an address. Ain't gonna happen. Please use email. I don't have a name tag on, but that's my personal opinion. That's my legal opinion for doing this for so long. It just makes it so much easier. Okay. Okay, here's a good one. Title companies, most of them lock the door at 5:36, whatever. Doesn't mean they're gone. A lot of times they're still there working, especially at the end of the month. But let's take middle of the month, and it's the last day to deliver the earnest money and the option fee, and it's 10 o'clock at night, or it's 11 o'clock at night. Can you still deliver it? Yeah. I had that exact question last week, and I loved it because this agent took a video of them, selfie, and then did it this way, envelope, had a check, had someone with them put the check in the envelope and put the envelope in the night drop and had a video of it on the floor inside of one of our offices. And our office was like, is that okay? And I'm like, it's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
Because the video had a timestamp and a date. I'm like, sweet. They did it. So yeah, up until 11:59. Now, if they were there and it's 12:30, I'd go, they're late. But, seller didn't terminate. So, yeah, right. Yep. Any of that's great. That's all good. Technology's in this case is wonderful. And then I already talked about this under the outline. Seller's paragraph 5C, failure to timely deliver the earnest money. If the buyer fails to deliver the earnest money within the time required, seller may terminate or exercise other remedies or both by providing notice to buyer before the buyer delivers the earnest money. So even though there's a deadline, if the seller hasn't terminated before the buyer does get the earnest money there, then no harm, no foul. Okay. Other problem areas with earnest money. It's not delivered at all. Option fee is not delivered at all. So there's no option. There's no option money delivered, no option, right? That's clear. The earnest money is not delivered. What do we do? Well, on the day that it was all due, we'll send an email to everybody. Hey, we haven't received earnest money or option fee. Thank you very much. That just puts everybody on notice that we didn't get it. We're not going to say, hey, you need to get it because the seller can terminate the contract if you don't get the earnest. We're not going to do all that. We're not going to say all that. It's not our job. Here's our job to say, hey, we didn't get it. And we'll email everybody. Do you still have a valid contract without earnest money? Yes. Yes, you do. No. Absent, you can do a contract with zero earnest money.
Earnest money.
I wouldn't recommend it. but you can. The parties want to do that. I had one time, boy, when not this last time when the market was so hot, but a while back. The earnest money was the sales price, and it was a cash deal. And so one of my employees brought that to me. Is this okay? And I'm like, whoa, they really want this house.
Yeah.
And so I think they had like a 7-day option, and that went hard on day 8, and we closed. I said, man, they want this deal regardless. It's the only time I'd ever seen that. But we'll notify you. We've had deals before where you get down to closing, they still haven't sent the money in, and the seller hadn't terminated. And it closed. They just didn't want to put their earnest money up. And I'm like, dummy, what an idiot. See, people are weird, right? You see weird things all the time. That's okay. All right, 6B. Commitment and exception documents have to be delivered by the title company within 20 days from the contract being delivered to the title company. Okay. So that's not 20 days from the effective date. It says 20 days after delivery to the title company, right? So I haven't seen this, but I always bring it up anyway. You got the contract, you got the earnest money, don't drive around your car with it or forget about it. Get it delivered to the title company ASAP to start that 20 days, because the buyer can terminate if they don't get all those things. Some title companies don't deliver exception documents. Do you know what exception documents are? Schedule B. Okay. Easement agreement, maintenance agreement, whatever the things are in exception. The main parts are the deed restrictions, okay, or exception documents. We deliver those in an email to everybody, including the lender, with hyperlinks to those documents. Easy. We have a department with the Republic that does that. Boom, here it is, and it's within the 20 days after delivery of it to us. So if you're dealing with a title company that doesn't do that, how's your buyer going to get those exception documents? Make sure they do. Otherwise, the buyer's got an out. Okay. 6D. 6D. Paragraph 6D. This is the objection paragraph. So if you turn to that on your contract form, it says buyer may object in writing to defects, exceptions, or encumbrances to title that are disclosed on the survey, other than some exceptions to that, or disclosed in the commitment, minus some exceptions, or which prohibit the following activity. So you got a time frame there that the parties would agree to. And if that time passes, then the buyer waives it. There's a waiver. So if there's something on the survey that they accept to, something in the title work, you're not going to accept the things on Schedule C, like there's a judgment or there's a probate or there's a federal tax lien. Those are curative items that the title company is going to make sure are all cleared before we close. We're talking about Schedule B items, okay? And then including the deed restrictions. I always get asked, what should I put in that big long line under objections? That's a tough one. Don't put residential real estate. That's meaningless. Okay. And I see that. What would go in there would be something like construction of second story on existing structure. Okay. Construction of swimming pool in the backyard. That one can be kind of gray, because think about it. You get a survey. Survey is going to show if there are any easements or building lines, okay, that might shrink the area where you could put a pool. Or they want to expand the footprint of the property and bust out the back and make the den real big, or make the master suite real big, or add a mother-in-law suite real big. And so a survey is going to give them the parameters that they have to work with. And so if they put, expansion of the footprint, building a 2-story, there are particularly older subdivisions in Dallas that have that restriction, 1 story only.
Mhm.
And so that's why it's important to look at the deed restriction. So if they put that in there, construction of a 2nd story, they get the deed restriction, go, whoa, I can't do that. Then the buyer says, okay, I'll waive that. They don't have to terminate. They can waive it and go ahead and buy the property. We get phone calls, a lot of phone calls when that happens. Or they may go, nope, seller, you need to cure that. So I can't cure that. It's in the deed restrictions. Here's what usually happens in these older subdivisions. The buyer or the buyer's agent says, there are only 3 houses on this street that aren't 2-story. Remove that part of the deed restriction. Can't.
Mhm.
The deed restrictions are recorded documents that were put in place when the subdivision was developed. Who can remove those?
You can't.
Owners that are affected by the deed restrictions would have to amend those declarations. It's never going to happen. And so the buyer is faced with the risk. Well, they did it. I'll just take that risk and do it myself. They go, what do you think? I'm like, I don't have an opinion.
Mm.
And neither do you. Okay. Yes.
I just want to share, I actually have the exact same situation. They're kind of in the southeast portion of the Dallas, actually maybe northeast,
Okay.
close to the lake.
Close to White
When they
Rock Lake.
when
Yeah.
they bought the house,
Yeah.
there's a deed restriction of no 2nd story.
Yeah.
But the next door neighbors, they all have 2nd story.
Yeah.
So they
Yeah.
asked me, what do I do? I say, well, you can't do anything except for that if you want to run the risk, just
That's it.
do it.
Yeah.
Hopefully nobody will sue you.
Right. Right. Because who has the right to enforce deed restrictions? Owners.
Yeah.
Owners. Not the city. They say, oh, I'll go get a variance from the city. Yeah, go ahead. That doesn't do it
Doesn't matter.
because the deed restriction's still there. That just says the city's not going to do anything.
Mhm.
Owners, you mean all the owners who live in the subdivision?
Mhm.
Okay, so everyone has to agree,
Mhm.
make that change.
I don't know if it's 100% or if there's a percentage. I just don't know the answer to that, but it's a lot. It's just not going to happen unless you have a really small
Yeah.
street and everyone goes, yeah, I don't care. I got to watch my time.
Mhm.
Oh, can I go longer? If anybody has to leave at 12 o'clock, just get up. Just be fine. You'll get your credit. But I like to tell you these things because I think they're important. They emphasize. And I could stretch this out a long time, but I won't. I had an attorney that was a friend, is a friend. Construction in his, and this happened a long time ago, in his subdivision slowed way down. And that developer sold the lots to a volume builder. Okay. There was a 30-foot setback. He had a nice custom home on the street, 30-foot setback. He gets up one day and there's 5 forms set up to pour slabs. Okay. Right next door, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at 20 feet. Okay. This guy was city attorney in Irving. Okay. And I was back in my early baby lawyer days. He used to call the developer. You can't do this. It's 30 feet. No response. They roughed in the plumbing, called them. You can't do this. They roughed in the plumbing. Then they poured the slab. Then they put up the walls. Then they dried it in. And then they put on the roof. And he finally, each time he called and would follow it up with written stop, they wouldn't do it. So he sued them. And, oh, what do you want? We'll just do these. These are our models. But as we do the rest of them, we'll do 30. And he goes, no, tear them down. I don't want money. I don't want damages. I want you to put them where they're supposed to be. And the court ruled in his favor, and they had to tear all that down, take out all the concrete, Why? Because he was an affected owner in that subdivision, and it was 30 feet. He goes, no, I want 30 feet. I was aware of another one, this two-story deal. A builder went into an area in East Dallas,
Mhm.
1 stories all up and down this one street. I won't tell you which one it is. And he bought a house from somebody that died, and he bulldozed it. And the neighbor next door happened to be a trial lawyer in Dallas. He goes, no.
He can't do that.
Looked up the building permit, saw he was going to build this giant box. You just can't do that. 3 years in litigation to stop it. So Anyway, that's what goes in D.
Horrible stuff.
6D. All right. 6E, notices required by law. Mold remediation certificate. Okay, you've got that one, which is new. And then you have the mud, PUD, PID. Those are, remember, they're extra taxing jurisdictions by law. How do you know that? Look at the CAD. Typically, you're going to find a reference to like a MUD, stands for Municipal Utility District. You're going to find these primarily in areas that are developing, like north of here, where a city like Salina, Prosper, Melissa, all the rest of them are up here. They don't have the infrastructure in yet, so they set up a MUD or they set up a PID. And these entities, they're set up by statute, and they have the right to sell municipal bonds. Okay, and then property owners pay tax to pay interest on the bonds to people that buy them, and they're sold on the market, and to retire the principal. And eventually, particularly on a MUD, it'll go away. They'll pay those bonds off, and it goes away. But you'll see that in on the CAD. We also have a department that'll tell you. Megan can help you with that probably if you want to find it or direct you to them. Who to contact to get the form, because it's vitally important, legally required that the buyer execute a notice. It's a statutory notice that the property is located in this district. And that notice includes the amount of authorized bonds to be sold, the amount of the current bond indebtedness that's still owed, and the current tax rate. So also, if you can't get her, you can't get us quickly, Google that district. Just use the CAD, Google that district. Most of those have the form online where you can just print it out, have the buyer sign it. Because if you don't, the buyer has the right to terminate the deal. If they don't get that notice before or at the contract stage, they have the right to terminate the contract anytime up through closing.
Mm.
I've had it happen at the table. That's shocking that it gets that far, but make sure that's done. Seller's disclosure on paragraph 7B, that's within 7 days after delivery to the buyer. Okay, and if it's not delivered, up until closing. So best practice, have that seller's disclosure done and give it immediately. So you eliminate that risk of the buyer being able to terminate. What if something changes that's on the seller's disclosure during the period the property's under contract? You got to give another one. You got to let them know. Okay, you can't just go, oh man, the air conditioner quit working, I'm not going to tell them. You have to. You have to tell them. Okay, lender required repairs is paragraph 7E are not agreed to be made by the buyer and or the seller, or if the lender required repairs exceed 5% of the sales price. So again, that's another place that the buyer can terminate.
Question.
Yes.
So is there a form to amend the seller's disclosure, or you just ask the seller to re-sign it? Is there amendment? Sorry, is there a form?
There's not,
Okay.
to my knowledge. I would just do another one, probably.
Okay.
And somewhere on there, I would just say amended.
Okay.
Just handwrite it in there where it can be legible. And then I would even maybe attach a note. And this is where it's been amended, just so people can see it. That's probably a good practice.
Okay.
Okay.
I have a question on that.
Yes.
What if you're a listing agent and then the buyers, they check B3? You don't have to give it to them? Can they do it?
Okay. Just, let me look real quick. 7B3. Yeah. I don't know who would do that, but some people do. It's just not required. Okay. Paragraph 14 is casualty loss. A casualty loss, good example would be hailstorm. You know, we get hail in this part of the country in the spring and the summer, sometimes other times. Let's say it damages the roof. You know, hey, you're gonna have to fix the roof. It kind of puts a stop on things. Okay. And so the seller's obligation is to repair and put it back in the condition it was under the contract stage. And if they don't, the buyer can terminate. I mean, that makes sense, right? Or they have a fire. It doesn't completely burn the house down. Same thing, that's a casualty loss. Remember, we have homeowners insurance. That's what casualty is. It insures against those casualty losses. Teenager gets real excited and hits the gas instead of the brakes and runs through the garage door and through the sheetrock into the den. You got to fix that. A lot of times there is a provision here that if the seller's insurance company will agree, and that's the tough part, then they can assign their insurance benefits to the buyer. The seller pays the deductible, the deal closes, and then the buyer is working with the seller's insurance company. Good luck. A lot of times, and the lender is going to go, no, 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 no. We want it fixed because that's the collateral for our loan.
Right.
And we did an appraisal based on a house with no damage. So we want it fixed before closing. And then you hear all the buts. Oh, I'm coming here. My truck is on the way. Yada, yada. I'm sorry. Well, title company escrow. It's always a great question. Not a good idea. Except I'll get you, hang on. And the reason why and you do the escrow agreement and all that, but a lot of times it still ends up in an argument. To me, again, covering up my name tag, it's best to get it fixed, delay the closing, whatever that may run, whatever it may look like. And then to try to go, okay, well, we're going to do an escrow agreement. I mean, I see this over and over and over again. The buyer goes, well, I don't like the job. I don't like that contractor. I don't like the paint color. True case. It was a 3-car garage that was a builder model. One of the garage units was an office. And the buyer goes, I want that converted back to a garage. So take the wall out. I want a 3-car garage. I don't want an office. And there was an escrow. It was horrible. Because after closing, and the seller went in and they moved the wall and they put the garage door back in, they did all these things that were contemplated. He comes back and he goes, don't release the escrow because my Tesla won't fit after I put in the charging station. Well, too bad. But he caused a lot of problems and threatened to sue if we released the escrow money. I'm not going to take that on. And I felt so bad for these sellers because they did everything they were supposed to do. And so my point is, and I guess my suggestion would be, get it all tied up before closing. Because once that's done, it's done. I mean, you think about it. The buyer had inspected. He never once mentioned, I'm putting a charging station in the garage and my Tesla needs to go in there. Oh, okay. Buyer approval under the third party.
Okay.
Oh, you had a question.
I lost it.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
If you think about it, I'll stick around till
Okay.
5 o'clock. Okay.
We'll hold you to it.
All right. That'd be fun. Okay. Third party financing, easy. That's buyer approval. You agree on a time frame, the deadline between the buyer and the seller that they have to have buyer approval. That's basically credit worthiness of your buyer. Okay. The buyer has to terminate within that time. And new in this last revision, they have to give a notice of termination and a statement from the lender that sets forth the lender's reason for terminating. Okay. So that's new. You're going to have something from the lender on that one. On property approval, obviously, if it fails to meet the lender's underwriting guidelines for appraisal, insurability, repairs. I had one once where the roof had to be replaced. The lender goes, that roof is so old, we want it replaced. And they have the right to do that. And the buyer terminated because the seller didn't want to fix the roof. Nope, roof had a leak. It was a 40-year-old roof. Yeah.
Now, question. I mean, I am a lender, so
Yep.
I'm just learning also.
Good.
But with that, doesn't that typically stick with the house? I know an appraisal sticks with the house for a specific amount of time if someone backs out. It sticks. Now, if they turn around and if one lender says, hey, you need the roof replaced, 95% of the chance every lender is going to say the same thing because it's going to pop up. So does that typically stick with the house or?
Yes and no. That appraisal is specific to that transaction,
Okay.
not to that house.
Okay.
Because that appraisal is done for that buyer on that property.
Okay.
Okay. So they go to another lender down the street, they may not have the same requirement.
Because I was thinking like when you were talking about, you know, the lender says they have to check. I know FHA guidelines are much more strict than conventional.
Yep.
They look for cracks in the floor.
Right.
If they see any of that, they're
Right.
gonna have to be fixed.
Nope.
Especially for FHA. So I know that typically sticks.
Yep.
If that's told, so I didn't know if it was.
Yep.
the opposite.
It will. Good questions.
Okay.
Thank you. We're going to hear from the,
FHA loan. Yeah.
we're going to hear from the Fed about 1 o'clock. They're cutting again,
Yeah.
which doesn't automatically translate into lower rates, but eventually, hopefully it'll filter down.
Yeah, we usually see it like if they say they're gonna cut, we usually see it about 2 to 3 weeks before.
Yeah.
And so when the cut happens,
You're already
we
there.
actually, it already has been done.
Right,
So
right.
sometimes if it's not cut as much as we expected, rates
Yeah.
usually go up.
Yeah.
We always get put in.
So
the
my
loop.
question, where are you today on the 30-year conforming?
I just got a text, I just got a notification. If you have the app, it's called the National Average Mortgage. They send you Mortgage News Daily. They send you updates every day. So
Oh, that's cool.
30-year for a conventional is at a 6.4.
Yeah.
So
Look up historical interest rates since 2000 sometimes. It's really interesting because this rate that you have right now is really good.
Yeah.
It's really good.
It's
The
really
problem is a lot of people bought on those 3 or sub 3s
Mhm.
and they're like, oh, kind of stuck.
it's also like a 6.4 if you have, 760
Yeah.
credit score.
Right,
If
right.
you don't, then
So go any lower with a higher credit score?
after 760, anything above, it's about the same.
Yeah.
When you hit in the 600s, you usually see like 6.875,
Yeah.
7.
How
FHA
great to have a
historically-
lender in here with you. So I've seen a lot in 40 years, I promise. So on those rates, but it's still a good rate. The property approval, got that. Residential leases. The bottom line on the residential lease, they have to be delivered. Okay. Seller has 3 days after the effective date to deliver the leases, and the buyer can terminate in writing within blank days after receipt. So there's 2 things going on there. Seller's got 3 days after the effective date to deliver the leases. And I'm talking a residential lease for people that live there, solar panels, whatever the lease may be. It's got to be delivered. Oil and gas, minerals, other things, got to be delivered. Then the buyer has to have a period of time to review those leases and go, nah, I don't want to mess with that. So that's the time frame you want to put in there on how long they have to review. If the leases are not being assumed, there are leases, but they're not being assumed by the buyer, like a solar panel or the residential lease, that means they're going to be terminated before closing. Okay. Not being assumed, then there's no escape hatch. Buyer can't terminate because he's not assuming them. Okay. Fixture leases, same thing. That was the solar panel example. All right, condos, within 7 days from when the condo documents and rules are delivered to the buyer, and within 7 days from when the resale certificate is delivered. When you're talking about subdivision documents in the contract, that's everything that the HOA gives you, in addition to that resale certificate that tells you what all the money, how the money's going to flow, what's going to be due on that transaction. And so yeah, you're going to have 7 days. So it's kind of like a hidden option. Okay, you have a 10-day option, but your subdivision documents aren't delivered until day 12. Your buyer just got 7 more days. So it's a hidden option. Okay. Okay, addendum for backup. This one gets confusing for people. If the primary contract does not terminate by the deadline in paragraph G, then the backup automatically terminates. So the primary terminates either by its own termination or by closing. All right. You don't have to do anything to terminate the backup if that happens. And then sale of other property, the other property doesn't close and fund. Okay, close and fund by the date in paragraph A, the contract automatically terminates. The buyer can waive this termination by waiving the contingency and depositing additional earnest money before the automatic termination. Remember, look at the language. It says if this happens, then it automatically terminates. And parties can always go back in and amend the contract, but a lot of times the seller go, no, I'm not going to amend it. I have somebody else that I may want to give me a backup. Okay. Okay. Interest of time. It's only 5 after. Questions? Yes, no? All right. Thank you. I'll stay. If anybody has anything, I'll stay for a little bit.
All right, I just want to say thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
Wonderful. I just want to let you know that these are very, very important knowledge to have when you work with buyers and sellers. And literally, I have at least another dozen questions, but I don't want to hold you up here because if I go through all my questions, you'll be here all the way to 5 or maybe it's 5 o'clock tomorrow. So
right.
let's finish here, and we'll have Jay back sometime next
Sure,
year,
sure.
and we'll take a break for the holidays. And this is how we help our clients to either terminate or not terminate by the contract. We have to know the contract in and out, inside and out, every single line. And even for that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 bullet points on that termination notice, you need to know what those are.
Yeah.
So that by doing so, your buyer can get out and get them earnest money back. And there are many other ways to do it, but you won't get the earnest money back. And what's the point, right?
Right.
So you need to know. So thank you so
Good.
much, Jay. And we'll continue on this. And I'm pretty sure you have a lot more questions. And we will have another training next week by the luxury agent for the New Year's planning. And that will be the last training we have this year. And next year, we'll have a lot more fun. And I have some gift cards here for you to grab, but it's $20 each because not the gift cards, like discount cards, because we are supporting the Chinese New Year event in South Lake.
Oh, cool.
Oops, sorry. So this is kind of a charity thing where we have donated money to the
Nice.
The Chinese organization in South Lake, and they are holding a big event at the town center. Usually there's hundreds of thousands of people, lots of people.
Oh, that's neat.
So this is a discount card you can purchase and just donate. The money will be donated to the organization for all the nice restaurants. These are really good restaurants, and you get discount for those. So if
Right.
you want those, let me know. Also, Merry Christmas and
to
Happy
you.
Holidays, and thank you all so much. We'll
Yeah.
see you next
Can
time.
give them your contact info real quick?
Oh yeah, that's
What's
right.
that? Yeah. And I was going to say, please don't hesitate to contact me if you have a question. Okay. Best way is email to include your phone number because I get it on my phone if I'm not sitting in front of my computer. You can also call me, but typically I don't answer if you're not in my contact list because for some reason I get spam calls.
So everyone, just pass your phone around. And we just add your contact.
Yeah. 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 Well, you could, but absent that, leave a message. Leave a message because that pops up on my phone. I'll call you right back. And yeah, that's it. All right. So phone number,
Thank you.
cell phone number 214-317-2215. And my email is my name spelled out in lowercase. It's JayTurner@republictitle.com. And we appreciate y'all. You guys seriously do a great job. And you're always so attentive, whether it's on Zoom or in person. So I love coming here.
And you
And-
guys will get a follow-up from me. As I said earlier, Trek is closed until the 15th for processing.